Okay, so first of all, I'm Alexander Rolap. I'm an EU product policy manager for Mitsubishi Electric, based in our government representation division in Brussels. So in essence, I'm an EU lobbyist. I'm here today to talk about the prospects for the life cycle sustainability of fans and ventilation units under the EU's new Eco-Design for Sustainable Products regulation. And the ESPR has already been flagged by both Klaus, Ronald, and Jeff. Today, I'll talk about the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products regulation itself. I'll then go on to talk about how this bears on the world of environmental product declarations, life cycle assessments, product environmental footprints. And then I'll neatly segue into the project that Evia has been running on product environmental footprints with our consultant, EcoMatters. So, the ESPR, I'm sure you're probably all aware of this now, but it replaces the existing Eco-Design Directive and brings into the scope of Eco-Design pretty much every tangible product that you could imagine placing on the EU market. So the scope is now vast. The ESPR will continue to work as a framework. In respect to that framework, we will retain the lots or the implementing regulations with which we are very familiar. From an Evia perspective, we're talking about Grow Lot 6 and ENA Lot 11. This means that those eco-design regulations will remain the home for sustainability for ventilation units and for fans, respectively. More widely, as I mentioned, the ESPR extends to pretty much all tangible products. So now we're bringing in for the first time non-energy related products. But also even more widely, the ESPR will act as a framework for other existing sector-specific pieces of legislation and will in essence instruct them to go away and do sustainability for those products. The best example of this would be the Construction Products Regulation, the proposal for a revision for which was published on the same day as the Eco-Design Regulation proposal itself, and we are just waiting for publication in the official journal. But that revision of the Construction Products Regulation is going to better address sustainability in the spirit of the ESPR for construction products. So your question would then be, okay, but what does this mean? What can I specifically expect to have to address from a sustainability perspective for my products? Now, quite neatly, Article 5.1 of the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation provides a nice menu, a nice list. And these are the issues from a sustainability perspective that a policy officer like Ronald Peers will be looking at the next time they review existing eco-design regulations or consider introducing new ones. So what this means is there's a shopping list for the policy officer on aspects that should be considered for the next revisions of ENA Lot 11 and Grow Lot 6. I've done kind of a traffic light scheme here to illustrate how this would impact us. We have become very used for ventilation units and for fans to the regulation of energy efficiency. We're becoming more used, as Jeff was illustrating, to material efficiency requirements because we now have them in the new ENA Lot 11. But however, there are some requirements we are way less familiar with. Things like the presence of substances of concern in our products from an eco-design perspective, the possibility of remanufacturing and recycling, or the expected generation of waste materials. But perhaps the big one is environmental impacts globally, including carbon and environmental footprinting. And here we're starting to look towards EPDs, life cycle assessment, product environmental footprints. Your next question will be, well, when can we expect this to come for us? So as was mentioned by Jeff and by Ronald, for ongoing revisions of eco-design regulations, for example, Grow Lot 6, there is a transitional regime. Now, those products will be completed in terms of their revision under the existing Eco-Design Directive. What that means is they won't expect it to deal with the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products and this long list of requirements until maybe 2030-ish. However, there are some products, just because of the timeline of their development and review, means that they are first in line. Now, Jeff has already highlighted this one. Electric motors, a key component in ventilation units and other products that you will see on display at Chillventa. So that review, even though it's for a component of many final products, will be extremely insightful for us because it will start to set precedents that will later be transferred to our products. Just a final note on planning. So before the 15th of April 2025, the Commission has to publish a new eco-design working plan. That has to include some energy-related products as priorities. In essence, we expect that to confirm that the review of NLOT 30 will address the eco-design for sustainable products. We can be pretty certain of that because the policy officer has said it will be so. Just to loop back to precedents quickly. If we cast our net more widely in eco-design, we already see many examples of the Commission addressing these new sustainability aspects. I can point in the eco-design regulation for smartphones and tablets to a repairability scoring system. We can expect consideration to be given to repairability scoring systems, i.e. repairability labelling, for GROW Lot 6 and maybe NLOT 11 in the future. We can look at the ongoing review of NLOT 1 space heaters. The Commission is introducing self-monitoring requirements. There is now a firm legal base in ESPR to do so more widely. Again, precedents will be set there and learnings will be taken forward for the reviews of other lots, GROW Lot 6 and NLOT 11. The last one I'd highlight here is point 6, carbon footprints, product environmental footprints. So the Commission is already using its in-house product environmental footprint methodology in the preparatory study for eco-design requirements for solar PV. Again, we are setting precedents that they will look to use for other products, i.e. ventilation units and for fans. And the message really is here. We have this menu that we know the policy officers will be using. We're starting to see them implement these things. This gives you as companies a steer as to what you can be expected to need to develop in the coming years to prepare for these new requirements. One last note, and again, Jeff highlighted this. The Commission is also looking at horizontal studies on how to apply requirements across different products. It's looking at repairability scoring systems, which I previously mentioned. It's also looking at critical raw materials and recycled content. And again, here we see electric motors front and center for prioritization, given that the review of NLOT 30 will be a first ESPR priority. We can expect to see requirements for critical raw materials and perhaps even for recycled content. Okay, now to drill down into a specific requirement. This is the environmental footprint requirement. So, many of you will be familiar with the current landscape we have in the market for environmental product declarations. Maybe it's not necessary for me to say, but it's very, very fragmented, with different methodological requirements underpinning different schemes in different member states, with varying degrees of voluntariness or even mandatory nature in certain member states. This leads to methodological diversification and fragmentation, and fundamentally a non-comparability between environmental product declarations delivered by these various schemes. That, of course, leads to unfair competition and an unlevel playing field in the market. That needs to be resolved. And actually, these kind of issues are a clear reason why you would use EU-level harmonization to set EU-level requirements. So let's think about how this will look. Many of you will know that in the new Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, there is a requirement from 2030 for all new buildings to declare their life cycle GWP. That means the company constructing the building is going to come to Mitsubishi Electric as the manufacturer of the heat pump or the ventilation unit and is going to say, what's the environmental performance across the life cycle of your product? This means we need, at product level, a harmonized way that we're all using to ensure fair competition at the product level. And that'll be delivered under the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products regulation in the reviews of the product legislation that'll be forthcoming. And the Commission is likely to use for that the product environmental footprint methodology, as I previously mentioned. Now, this mechanism isn't new. It's exactly the mechanism that France is pushing at the member state level. There's even bigger picture here. We need those harmonized calculation methodologies at product level because ultimately we're all now required to report, as companies under the CSRD, information on the life cycle impacts of our products, particularly the carbon footprint. And we are asked by our suppliers to provide them with that information. Again, we need the harmonized calculation methodologies at product level in order to have fair competition at this operational disclosure level. So all of this taken together points a direction of travel towards needing harmonized requirements for life cycle assessment, product environmental footprinting at product level. Now, it is beholden on a trade association representing products covered by eco-design to prepare for the next revisions of those regulations. So from that perspective, Evia has started to prepare. When we started this project, you could probably say we were maybe 7 or 8 years ahead of when we would actually need to do this. But he who is best prepared wins. So Evia, in respect to fundamentally addressing this environmental footprint life cycle assessment issue for the next revisions of Grow Lot 6 and NLOT 11, has commissioned a consultancy, EcoMatters, to conduct a PEF study and establish PEF category rules for ventilation units and for fans. Now that project has 4 representative products, 1 non-residential ventilation unit, 1 residential ventilation unit bidirectional unit, 1 residential ventilation unit unidirectional unit, and also 1 fan. Now, I've given you the political background. I'm now going to hand over to the technical guy who is going to run you through some of the details of this project from a fan perspective, because this is the fan forum. So thank you very much. And if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to call me afterwards.